Hey everyone, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Ash Polson to discuss Nintendo's recent Nindies event. So let's get started. Alright Ash, so Nintendo had their sort of Nindies stream where they were showing off a bunch of indie games coming out for the Switch, and you actually got to go to the event itself where you got to try a lot of these Nindy games out. So I thought it'd be fun to just get together and talk about it, because I also saw a lot of people requesting us to do this discussion. So I was like, let's give our thoughts on this, about what you played, what I saw, and what kind of excited us about this whole thing. So right off the bat, what'd you think of the event that you went to?
Well, first I just want to, I guess just in an overall sense, I want to say that I really got to tip my hat to Nintendo, because I went into this showcase not necessarily expecting the worst, but not really quite sure what to expect from indies on Switch, and I had no reason to worry. Like, Nintendo has done such an amazing job of courting the indie scene with the 3DS and Wii U, and that seems to be completely uninterrupted with the Switch. I mean, the little presentation that we sat down to watch at the event itself really kind of brought into focus all these indie games that are coming out on the Switch in the next few months, and it even outlined certain games that are outright Switch exclusives that are not ever going to be, at least as far as we know, not ever going to be on other consoles, like Runner 3, Pocket Rumble, Blaster Master Zero, and Fast Remix. So, and there are all these other indies that are launching first on Switch, like Shakedown Hawaii and Shovel Knight, Spectre of Torment, Graceful Explosion Machine. So really, before I get into the games themselves, I have to say, on a grand scale, Nintendo's really killing it with the indie scene. And a lot of the indie developers I spoke to at the event itself as I was playing their games, they all had nothing but glowing things to say about how Nintendo's been approaching them, how great they've been to work with, especially compared with the Wii U era. So, of course, now this is a Nintendo-run event. They're not going to badmouth Nintendo at the event, but I got the sense that they were really genuinely, they were being genuine with me about how Nintendo's been almost completely different and much better to work with in the Switch era versus the Wii U era. And even the WiiWare era as well.
I get the sense that Nintendo realized how big indies could be, and hey, also helps fill out that release schedule and actually get people excited about the games coming out, because holy crap, there are so many indie games coming to the Switch. Like, this thing is an indie game machine, almost literally, and it's really gonna, I think it's almost a good idea for these indies to support the Switch, because if you have somebody that's dedicated to Nintendo and they're looking for something to play, well, all of a sudden they're going to just wait and see and check out some of these other crazy games. And there's a lot of good-looking indie games coming out. And during the event, I mean, they were, we had, as you said, we had Runner 3. They showed off a little bit of Ukulele running on Switch. They had, of course, Spectre of Torments coming out at launch, and Fast RMX. And it's all looking great. But the one that stood out to me the most, and I think it did for a lot of people, is Wargroove. And
right.
I think the reason for that is because as soon as I saw this and I saw the combat, like when it was started out like, oh goody, another standard strategy game, and then they showed the split screen thing where the one side, one army on the other side and the other army on this side. And I was like, oh my god, it's Advance Wars. And I think that's been the reaction of most people. It's like, holy crap, Nintendo has not made an Advance Wars for us. Here's our spiritual successor, just, fantasy Advance Wars. It's sold.
That seems to be the case. And, I typically don't play as many games like that, so that didn't really stand out to me as being particularly exciting. However, when you told me that the reaction to it had been, oh, it's like Advance Wars, I was like, oh yeah, okay, this has definitely already found an audience. And I of course, there were only 12 games to play at the event, and Wargroove was not among them. So I want to make very clear, had Wargroove been there, I would have played it and recorded it, but unfortunately it was not. So no Wargroove gameplay impressions yet, but as soon as Nintendo wants to let us play it, we'll bring those impressions to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to that one, just because I've played a little bit of Advance Wars, but I definitely got it more into Fire Emblem. But I like that people got excited for that so much, and it is like a very clean art style that really does match up with Advance Wars so well. So that'd be really cool to see. But that's my main impressions. I can't really talk about individual games too much beyond that, because unfortunately am not a huge indie game player. I notice them, I take account into them, but I don't have the time to sit down and play all these crazy ones. I sort of have to pick and choose my my battles when it comes to that. So
I hear you.
That's why I'm sort of curious about your experience with the games that were those 12 games that were available at the Nindies event.
Right, yeah. So I want to be clear. I didn't get to play all 12. It was just there were too many people there, and it was only me. So like most of the outlets there had multiple people there to kind of help each other out. I was there by myself. Andre was working on the Switch review and the Zelda review, and you're in Pennsylvania, so I covered it by myself. So I didn't get to play Flipping Death or Tumbleseed, unfortunately. So I want to make that clear. I did get some off-camera footage of them, but I didn't get to play them. And I also didn't bother playing Shovel Knight Spectre of Torment because we're going to be reviewing it and playing it very soon. So I wanted to focus on the other games as much as I could. So the first thing I feel like I should talk about is Blaster Master Zero, because that got an immediate, just super excited response on GAF and other places. And I can see why. I mean, it's Inti Creates' new project. I love Inti Creates, of course. They make Azure Striker Gunvolt. They've made the Mega Man Zero series, Mega Man 9 and 10. I mean, when you think about me and the kind of games I love, of course I love Inti Creates. So Blaster Master Zero, it's kind of like it's kind of a soft reboot of the series. It's not a sequel to the original games at all. It is a soft reboot. They're kind of starting over from zero, as the developer explained to me, and it looks awesome. I mean, if you like the original Blaster Master, I only played a little bit of it back in the day, so that's something I do want to go back and fix one of these days. But from what I've seen and played of the original Blaster Master, Zero absolutely kind of captures the look and the sound and just the overall gameplay of Blaster Master. And this is a true, full-length retro adventure that plays like the original Blaster Master, and it even includes co-op, which kind of works perfectly with the Switch and kind of what the Switch is all about. It includes this really cool co-op mode where basically the second player takes control of his crosshair, almost like I want to say it's like almost like Super Mario Galaxy, where you know how the second player in that game could control the Wii Remote and the Luma could shoot stars at the screen, star bits at the screen. This is kind of like that. You're controlling a crosshair, and you can, pepper enemies with these weak shots, and then as player 2 destroys more enemies, they then become able to drop power-ups from player 1. So it's kind of balanced in the sense that unless player 2 kills enemies, they won't build up this meter that allows them to drop power-ups. But, so it's kind of cool. Like, it's this really kind of neat drop in, drop out, co-op 2-player thing in Blaster Master, and that's exactly the kind of thing that Nintendo should be targeting for Switch, because it's, you can play it, and then if someone else wants to play, take out the Joy-Cons, and suddenly you've got a co-op game going. So, nothing but great things to say about Blaster Master Zero. It's pretty tough to begin with. Like, this game does not wear kid gloves or treat you with kid gloves. Like, it expects you to know, hey, this is a retro game. It's not, like, unbelievably hard for the sake of being hard, but it's not easy either. So know going in that you've got a fairly, stiff challenge on your hands, but I have nothing but good things to say about it.
The big question I have about it is, did you feel you had a sense of where you needed to go? Because, that's a common problem with a lot of old NES games, is that there's not a lot of guidance, so it's easy to get lost with those sort of big adventure games like Blaster Master, where you can get out of the ship and explore a lot of different places. And I've played a little bit of it myself, not a lot, but that's the one thing I was always afraid of with Blaster Master is, where do I go?
Right. Well, I mean, I only played, I would say, half or even less than half of the first area, but everywhere that I played in that level, I didn't really have any trouble figuring out where to go. And of course, I was being distracted by the fact that I was talking to one of the developers while I was playing the game and, just having that conversation. So, but I didn't ever really feel like I got lost. So that might happen later on in the game, but I feel like the places that you can only go to when you're out of your mech are pretty clearly signposted. I mean, there are places that you can only go to because the openings are only small enough for, your human character to pass through. So I feel like it's pretty clearly messaged. I mean, there was kind of a labyrinthine, almost like a Metroidvania style type thing going on where there were places I couldn't get to yet and I would have to come back, but I didn't really feel like I didn't have a good sense of where to go.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, I'm pretty excited for it too. There's a lot of old retro games that I missed out on that I always like to try, and with this, it's sort of the best of both worlds. It's a throwback while also being something new.
Yeah, and also I should mention though that there is a little thing you'll have to get used to when running around outside the mech, and this is something from the original Blaster Master as well. But there's fall damage, like so when you get out, and I had forgotten about that. So when you get out of the mech, I'm just like running and jumping around like Mega Man here, and I'm like wondering why I'm taking damage when I drop from ledges. I'm like, what's going on? And of course the developer's like, oh yeah, remember there's fall damage. And like this is like Donkey Kong Jumpman fall damage. Like you drop even a little bit, and you're taking some damage. It's not instant death like in Donkey Kong, but you're still taking some damage. So it kind of adds an interesting wrinkle to on-foot exploration, where you have to really be careful what jumps you attempt and how you move about the environment.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And the crazy thing is, it's not long until this game comes out. I believe I heard they announced March 9th. For
March 10th, actually.
March 10th, okay.
So it's actually a week after the Switch's launch. And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something that Damon Baker, who hosted the presentation we saw, brought up, when he was talking to us. And that is that Nintendo feels like they've learned from the Wii U's launch, where I believe they launched with like 28 different games or something. Between ports and new launch titles and things like that. And so with the Switch, he specifically said, the reason you've seen the launch lineup kind of fill in recent days and weeks is because we don't want to launch with like a million games on day one. We've learned that it's better to space out our content for the long run. So we launch with a more conservative but still exciting lineup on day one, and then have all these games like Blaster Master Zero and other things coming in the weeks following launch.
Nice, that's awesome. So,
yeah.
What other indie games that you got to play stood out?
I played Snake Pass, and I wanted to bring that up because I know that's gotten a bit of particular attention, and it's really cool. It's cool from a physics-based standpoint. It's not the most attractive game. It runs at 30 frames per second, and it's not the most amazing-looking game to begin with, so it's not a good technical showcase for the Switch. But that said, I mean, the physics and the fact that to play this game, you really do have to think like a snake almost, which sounds trite, but it's true. Like, you build up speed on the ground by slithering back and forth by pressing left and right. You don't just push up to go forward. No, you actually you have to move how a snake would move. And the game, or the main snake that you play as, Noodle, he reacts, his body reacts really realistically to what you're trying to get him to do. And basically, the point of the game is to get him to slither up these different, I guess, environment objects and various, walls and things, and to get all these gems. And it's really tough. Like, what you have to get used to it. And once you get used to it, it becomes easier. But there's definitely an initially very high learning curve. And it's just, it's a weird, it's not my kind of game. I don't see myself playing a whole lot of it personally, but it is absolutely the kind of game that people who like kind of slow thinking person's methodical games will really like. It's very much for the kind of thinking person's puzzle crowd,
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Now, I know a lot of people, the main reason I know about this game, and again, it's because I don't follow indie games that closely, is because David Wise is doing the music for the game. And were you able to hear the music at all?
I actually went back and watched the footage I captured from that game in which I could hear the music. Mm-hmm. It didn't really stand out to me there. I actually didn't know until you told me just now that David Wise had done the music. So, unfortunately, I can't say that the song I heard, I was only in the first world, of course, or for the first stage. Mm-hmm. That song didn't really stand out to me, but maybe the rest of the soundtrack's going to be really, really cool.
Well, we'll see. But what else did you get to play?
I got to play SteamWorld Dig 2, and I think we have a lot of SteamWorld fans in the audience, and it really it's great. It's another really, tightly playing, great-looking platformer coming to the Switch, and SteamWorld Dig 2 specifically has kind of this elegant, painterly look to it. It's not unlike Braid, actually. Even just playing the game and looking at the game, it just reminds me of Braid, and in terms of the physics and the overall kind of look to it. And that's not a bad thing. I love Braid, and SteamWorld Dig 2, while I did not play the first SteamWorld Dig, so I can't really compare the two, the second one's looking like it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, you're basically, of course, digging through these, labyrinths, and you're finding Metroid-like upgrades. Like I got a speed booster upgrade that allowed me to make it to the door I needed to get through to get to the boss. Of course, without that speed upgrade, I wouldn't have been able to get there. So there's definitely a Metroidvania bent going on here. And for people who love those kinds of games, myself included, I think there's a lot to look forward to here.
Nice. Yeah, I never got the chance to play the original one either. And I've heard good things, but I just, don't have, again, the experience with it. But it's good that you're already enjoying it, and it's something you were able to just pick up with right away.
Right.
Yeah. So tell me about Shakedown Hawaii.
It is funny, when I saw this in the showcase, like the stream, I absolutely thought it was going to be called Super Retro City Rampage, because that's what it looks like. It looks like a 16-bit take on Retro City Rampage, and it kind of is that, but at the same time, it's also not. It's not, you're not going to see all the different, like, pop culture and video game references and kind of fourth wall breaking jabs at the game industry that you saw in Retro City Rampage. Hawaii Shakedown, despite looking similar, is and playing somewhat similarly, is very much its own thing. It's kind of got its own story. It is not, it's not kind of an incisive look at the game industry. It's not, no tongue-in-cheek stuff here. It is its own thing, and the developer admitted to me that that they're nervous that may be to its detriment, because a lot of what people loved about Retro City Rampage were all those little references. But what I played here, it's the gameplay is just as strong as it was in Retro City Rampage. You've still got this top-down view. I thought that experimenting with all the different weapons and just generally causing mayhem with them was a lot of fun. I didn't get the whole suite of weapons in the demo I played, but I definitely got quite a few, and I had like a missile launcher and shotgun, and I think like a Gatling gun and like a baton, and of course you can just go around punching. There are grenades, so there are a bunch of different ways you can just generally cause mayhem in this game, and it's very much that Grand Theft Auto type mayhem where you can just basically go around killing innocent people and however you choose, but it's all very cartoony and very kind of stylized here. It's not obviously in your face like it is in Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I didn't quite get into Retro City Rampage as much from a gameplay perspective, so I'm not gonna lie. Like Shakedown Hawaii isn't really doing it for me from a gameplay perspective either, but that's more just because of my own preferences and not because the game has any problems itself or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny to me that you said that the developer was nervous about this one since everybody loved the references in the first one. I tried to play a little bit of Retro City Rampage, and those references came so fast and with such abundance, I felt like it didn't have an identity of its own. And I just lost interest very quickly. So I like that. I actually like the idea that he's doing his own thing, taking that same basic concept, refining the gameplay, making his own thing. So I have high hopes for it. I don't know if I'll get to play it right away, because GTA like games just don't do much for me like you.
Me
but
neither.
It does look polished, and that's something to be commended.
Oh, it's definitely polished, and the 16-bit aesthetic is absolutely nailed. Like, it looks like a legit 16-bit game, of course, with better effects than what you could get back in the actual 16-bit days. But yeah, it looks like it's supposed to look, and it plays like a more polished Retro City Rampage, I suppose. So, if you like that game, as long as you're not too married to all the gaming and pop culture references in that game, then I think Shakedown Hawaii will probably make you quite happy.
Nice. Another interesting one that I found kind of intriguing during the presentation was Pocket Rumble, which you actually also got the chance to play. So how was that?
Pocket Rumble is legit. Like, it absolutely it looks like a Neo Geo Pocket game, and it sounds like one too. And I think that's so cool. Like, you've got these super low res sprites with this really fluid animation, and it kind of reminds me, like, with the character designs and everything, like all these transforming limbs and very anime-like designs, it kind of reminds me of a Neo Geo Pocket version of Skullgirls almost, where like you've got these really wacky anime characters duking it out and like their limbs are transforming, but it's all done in this game that looks like a Neo Geo Pocket game. And I think it's really cool. Unfortunately, I had kind of a weird experience with this game because I played it for quite a bit. And, I have to tip my hat to the developer because, the guy I played, obviously he made the game or helped make the game and is very good at it, but he was so good at it that he just absolutely just demolished me in every round we played, and I didn't really get a chance to, like, have any space to play and kind of get a feel for the controls. So what I do know is that it's very simplified, even compared to something like Street Fighter 2. It's super simplified. There are no input combos or really, like, input strings like that at all. Basically, you've got your light attack and your heavy attack, and then if you hold diagonal down left or diagonal down right, you'll get a different special move for both attacks. So in that way, it's almost Smash Brothers-esque, but not quite in the sense that you've got these, 2 attacks with 2 special attacks attached to both of them. And in practice, or in theory, I think that's pretty cool because it's not asking people to remember all these input combos or commands. On the other hand, in practice, I don't know if I really like the way it feels. Like, I don't know. Smash does it well because you combine this button with various directions, but with this, I just feel like I wasn't getting the precision I wanted, having to hold diagonal down either way to do a special move. It just didn't feel natural to me. So I like that they have it, and I think that should be the main mode of the game, but I do wish that there were optional input commands that you could activate and just play like a traditional fighter if you wanted to. But I still think it looks pretty cool. I just wish I'd had more of a chance to not get my ass beat so badly, so quickly every time, But I love the look of the game. I love it.
Yeah, that's funny to me. They didn't even try to go easy on you. No, I'm just going to destroy you.
Not at all. But again, though, this is exactly the kind of game that feels like it's made for Switch. Because, again, you can the 2 Joy-Cons. You always have 2 controllers with you if you want to play Pocket Rumble with anyone who's around you.
And it sounds a bit more feasible to play like that than something like Ultra Street Fighter, where you are inputting commands and something and stuff like that.
Right. I will say that. I mean, that in terms of the Joy-Con not having great, any D-pad, that is true. That kind of that alternative input method does work well for the Joy-Con. It doesn't feel natural to me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I do think you had a lot of fun with Graceful Explosion Machine.
Yes, I did. This has a super cool stylized look to it. Lots of angular shapes, very Art Deco-y, and it's basically a 2D horizontal shooter. And it's like kind of like Gradius or something like that, and or like Pixel Junk side scroller maybe. And it is so fun. So basically, you're on this horizontal plane, and you can turn around at any time. So you're not always going to the right. The levels loop around in on themselves, so you can fly either to the right or to the left, and you always have little, indications telling you if there are enemies off screen in either direction or power-ups off screen in either direction. So you're encouraged to fly around left and right upon these looping levels. And basically, yeah, you get various different weapons that you can use to take out different kinds of enemies, and you have to switch between them. Like, you can't just brute force your way through with the basic gun. That won't work. There are certain enemies that will only react when you use this like energy sword attack that kind of circles around your ship. There's another enemy where it has such high armor, high defenses, that you have to use this focused laser beam attack that you get a little later on. So it's very much a game it's very arcadey. It's about setting high scores. There is a story, but it is a very arcadey type game, and it's very much about switching weapons on the fly and knowing which weapons you need to bring out immediately to deal with different kinds of enemies, especially as the difficulty and the intensity ramps up. Because it starts off pretty easy, and I like that. It's not like an immediate difficulty wall, but soon enough, it's kind of like Geometry Wars, where you're playing and you're having doing fine, not too hard, and then suddenly you're just flanked with enemies on all sides, and all these bullets are coming at you. But the music's cool. It looks great. It's very much a chill-out game. I love it.
Just something you just relax with and just spend a few minutes having some fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's very arcadey, very pick up and play, and again, great for the Switch.
Yeah, nice. Well, what else stood out to you out of the last 3 games?
Probably what stood out to me the most out of the other 3 games is Celeste, and that's not because it's a particularly... it's not specific to the Switch. I actually played Celeste last year at PAX East, I believe, on PS4. So this isn't a Switch exclusive, but Celeste has kind of stuck in my mind since I played it on PS4, and I was really happy to see it confirmed for Switch here. And it's just a really fun 2D platformer again. I hate to keep saying 2D platformer because it feels like so many indie games are that, but I guess they are. So it's a really fun 2D platformer with an emphasis on figuring out how to get through an environment. So I don't want to call it a puzzle platformer because you're not necessarily solving puzzles, but you are trying to figure out how to use your very limited abilities to traverse these difficult rooms. So basically, the main character has an air dash that feels great, by the way. Her air dash is so fun to use. And so basically, she can air dash once per jump in any direction, any of the 8 directions, I should say. And she can also climb walls for a limited amount of time. And it's up to you to kind of figure out how to use that meager ability, or those meager abilities to get through each area. And so, of course, every time her feet touch ground, she gets another air dash, essentially. So 1 per jump. But later on, there are these pickups you can get mid-jump where it gives you another air dash. So, later on, you're basically trying to air dash to and fro, trying to get these pickups to give you another air dash and to get through these environments. And so basically, it seems to be the kind of game where you have a very limited moveset, and the game continuously introduces new and creative ways to make you think about how to use them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean, and it sounds fun. I love those types of setups where it really is just you versus the environment trying to figure out the best way to do it. And as long as it doesn't get too frustrating, I like a challenge, but if I'm like bashing my head against the wall trying to get this one thing done, it does start to aggravate, but hopefully it has a nice balance of that.
Well, it is. I mean, it's going to be a challenging game, I can tell you that, but it does seem like the difficulty ramps up nicely, and it's not... Nothing ever felt super impossible to me, but then again, I cut my teeth on Mega Man growing up, so maybe that's me. But I will say that the frustration factor seems like it's kept to a minimum, because anytime you die, you respawn basically instantly. Like, it's less than a half a second before you respawn. So you're not dealing with a loading screen. You don't have to pause and select retry. Nothing like that. The game knows you're going to die a lot, so it basically makes dying not a big issue.
Yeah, that's a good method to go with these types of games, so that's exciting.
Yeah,
and
the developer didn't want to comment too much on the story, but the sense I got from the story is that it's both kind of humorous and charming, but also a little bit somber in a pervasive way. So I'm really curious to see kind of how this all comes together, because it's got kind of a very unique vibe to it, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Nice. So tell me about Mr. Shifty.
So Mr. Shifty, basically think Nightcrawler from the X-Men movies, and that is Mr. Shifty. It is amazing how visceral and tactile it feels to kind of teleport around a room as Mr. Shifty. The game itself isn't a great technical showcase, I'm not going to lie. Like, even this, like, and this is something the developers were happy to admit there. The Switch version was having some problems. They promised me that by release it would be a smooth 30 frames per second, no hiccups, but I have to say, playing it there, the game would have these little hiccups and minor freezes, and things clearly were not running on all cylinders. And that's fine. It's still in development, but that is something to keep in mind, that there were some definite performance issues on the build I played, and that shouldn't be the case necessarily, because it's not exactly a graphically intensive game. So I do have I have faith that developers are going to fix this before launch, but it is something to mention. But in terms of just teleporting around the room, you kind of get that Nightcrawler does when he teleports around a room in X-Men 2, and it's really cool. Like, they really utilize HD Rumble well to make it feel super tactile and super visceral as you kind of teleport into a guard's face and punch him out, and then teleport behind another guard to avoid his bullets and punch that guy out. And it as much as the game suffers technically right now and isn't like the most amazing graphical showpiece, it really does feel like you are like Nightcrawler. It does. I keep coming back to Nightcrawler, but it's true.
No, it seems like if they were able to get these little issues fixed up, it'd be something you'd be really into.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a top-down perspective, so it's very much like Hotline Miami in that sense. It kind of feels like Hotline Miami, except a far less violent version of it. So this is obviously, even though you have guards with guns shooting at you and you're teleporting around punching people out, it's cartoon violence. It isn't like intense violence like Hotline Miami. But I liked Hotline Miami, but I don't know if this perspective is my favorite thing, and it's really cool. I love the teleportation. I love the feeling of teleporting around the room, but I don't know if it's the kind of concept that would last me an entire game. And I've been told that there are at least 100 levels, and I don't know if it's the kind of thing that I could see myself playing for 100 levels, unless they continuously add some new stuff into the mix, and it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of that, because I asked about weapons and such, and there are weapons you can pick up in the environment, such as like batons and 2x4s and pipes, but they break fairly quickly, and then you're back to your usual fisticuffs, and it doesn't feel so far like there's going to be a whole lot of variety across that 100 levels. But I could be wrong. I only played the first few, so I don't want to say that for sure yet.
Yeah. So it has potential, but not quite there yet, is what I'm getting.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the last game you played is The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth, and I saved this for last because, well, I'm pretty sure most people have played this game already.
Exactly. I mean, what's funny too is that Nicalis weren't even there, like for most of the event. Like the event was 4 hours, and their TV was off, and nobody at Nintendo knew where they were. And then they just showed up, I guess, at like 2:45, more than halfway into the event, and then people started getting to play Binding of Isaac, including myself. And I'm glad I saved it for last because it is at the end of the day the Binding of Isaac. If you've played that series, you know exactly what to expect here. If not, I mean, it's kind of a top-down shooter, very much like Smash TV, I guess, except it is incredibly dark, has incredibly, it's incredibly violent, incredibly dark, has religious themes, religious overtones. This is not a game for the squeamish. I mean, even in the very first level, you're fighting these minor enemies that have they're bleeding from their gouged out eye holes, and they're like piles of crap everywhere, and I literally mean piles of crap everywhere. I mean, it's just a dirty feeling, nasty feeling game, but I that's a compliment because that's the vibe it's going for. And if a top-down shooter that's just incredibly violent and M-rated, and suggestive appeals to you, then Binding of Isaac, I mean, there's a reason it's subsisted so long. People love this series, and I think Nintendo has done well to get the latest and apparently the greatest version of it. Apparently Afterbirth Plus includes every permutation of Binding of Isaac up to now and completes the story. So you're getting the complete definitive Binding of Isaac experience here if you choose to buy Afterbirth Plus on the Switch.
Nice. Yeah, it's always, I tried a little bit of it. It's a tough game. That's the thing. That
it's really hard.
Like, it will kick your butt. And it's all about, just trying again, sort of randomized a bit, getting through the rooms and just slowly getting better and trying to hang on so you can get better options as you go along. And it's challenging, but because of that, it also has a lot of replay value if you get into that style of gameplay.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, though. It is worth mentioning or highlighting the fact that the dungeons that you traverse are procedurally generated. So every time you die and you go back to the beginning, you're going to be playing through a different layout, basically. So, and I don't believe you go back to the beginning, or the true beginning, every time you die. I think every time you beat a level, you can start from that level when you continue, and you will be dying a lot because this game is brutally difficult and it doesn't hold your hand whatsoever.
Yeah, overall, I gotta say, I am kind of excited for all of Nintendo's indie games that they have announced and are coming down the line, because it really does feel like the Switch might be the perfect gaming machine for them, because most indie games are not that graphically intensive.
Right.
You usually, at least in my case, typically play them in short bursts and don't really need to play them on a TV to get the best experience. So they're kind of great as portable games.
Totally. They had me at Runner 3. Oh my God, Runner 3. Like, you don't even know. Like, Runner 2 was one of my favorite surprise Wii U launch games. And then I ended up getting it on various other platforms as well, because it's just that good. I adore Runner 2, so don't even talk to me about Runner 3. I cannot wait for that game.
Yeah.
So they had me there. And I guess before we finish, I should mention the, I guess, quote-unquote secret Nintendo Switch game they showed off at the Indie Showcase, which was Project Mekuru. And I guess Mekuru means flipping in Japanese, and that's essentially exactly what you do here. You basically, it's a competitive game, 4 players, and you can all play as your Miis, and basically you are butt stomping these tiles on the stage to turn them your color. And you can also, if you butt stomp near another player, you can attack them. You can turn their color tiles your own. So it's very chaotic. There's a little strategy there too, though, as well, because different stage layouts, I think, can have different layouts of tiles and shapes that you have to fill. So it seems very chaotic. It almost seems like a Mario Party minigame, but fleshed out into a full, indie experience, I guess. So I liked what I saw of it. We didn't get to play it, but just seeing the footage we saw of it, it seems like the kind of thing that would be fun to play at a party of 4 players. So, again, I guess what Damon Baker really highlighted over and over again is that they're targeting indie games that they believe will work particularly well on Switch and play to its strengths. And as you've seen here in our discussion, that's definitely been the case so far, and Project Mekuru seems to be another kind of feather in that hat, essentially.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So exciting stuff, especially if you're really into indie games or looking to get them get into them at some point, or some of these catching your eye. It's just great to see Nintendo really reaching out to that community, fleshing it out, and just showing them off, letting them shine on their own.
Yeah, and by the way, almost every game I played supported HD Rumble, and I'm going to continue preaching that gospel. HD Rumble's awesome. It's awesome, and it feels great. And of course, from game to game, some games utilize it better than others. But when games really utilize it well, HD Rumble's like the coolest thing. So, pretty much every game I played does utilize it, and that's pretty neat, I think.
Yeah, nice. So, alright, well, I think that covers it for our Nindies discussion, so thank you for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, and of course be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on the Switch and other things gaming too. Until next time, bye.